third generation version of Bentley's Continental GT Convertible claims to represent the pinnacle of open-top motoring. Bentley has been making iconic open tourers for around a century, some built to achieve success at Le Mans and Brooklands, others to convey their glamorous owners to the resorts of Monte Carlo and Cannes. All have been memorable, but in truth none has been truly sporting in the supercar sense. Until now, perhaps. Beautiful roof up or roof down, this is the fastest, most agile, most luxurious car of its kind this British brand has ever made.
Bentley has been producing luxury Grand Tourers since the company was founded back in 1919. Many of them open-topped models. And here's the latest in the line, the third generation Continental GT Convertible. The brand reckons this car is a definitive expression of opulent GT luxury. It's certainly exquisitely desirable. And potentially rather unusual. Exclusive luxury sports convertibles in the six-figure segment tend to fall into two categories. Either you choose a supercar drop-top with cramped rear seats and driving dynamics great for Silverstone but not so good for the suburbs, or you go for a huge leather-lined four-seater sports cabrio with a lumbering luxury power plant. An opulent sporting convertible, somehow able to satisfy both kinds of customer, would surely be desirable indeed. Is this it? Earlier Continental GT convertibles, usually known as GTC models, were very much open tops of the large lumbering sort. So far, there have been two in the modern era. The first partly Volkswagen engineered model of 2006 and a more refined second generation design introduced in 2011. This Mark III model, though, announced just before Bentley's centenary in early 2019, has the potential to be a much more sporting thing. Obviously, it's based on the third generation Conti GT Coupe model and, like that car, shares its lighter, stiffer MSB chassis with the current second generation Porsche Panamera. That Zuffenhausen model also donates a quicker reacting dual clutch gearbox, plus Bentley's also developed a more sophisticated four-wheel drive setup, much better weight distribution, sophisticated adaptive air suspension and an active anti-roll system, all of it helping to make the car more agile through the bends. In short, don't be deceived. This third generation car may look quite similar to its predecessor, but everything here has been taken to another level, most notably, we're told, in terms of the driving experience it can offer. No longer is this merely a car for cruising to the Riviera. Now it could possibly take in a lap or two of the Nürburgring on the way to. Which makes all the difference to its sales proposition. Previously, Continental GTCs were refined, luxurious and lovely to drive, but they wouldn't really have satisfied customers who today would otherwise be considering focused super sports GT convertibles like upper spec Porsche 911 Turbo Cabriolets, Aston Martin DB11 Volantes or possibly even Ferrari's Portofino. Bentley claims that this one can. So, should lottery winners form an orderly queue? Let's find out. You expect a drive in a Bentley to number amongst the world's great automotive experiences, and behind a wheel of this one, there's no disappointment on that score. Ease yourself behind the wheel with an admiring glance at the handcrafted leather and veneered wood and press the large, prominent central starter button. As the seatbelt tightens around you, the handcrafted 12-cylinder engine up front in this W12 variant growls into life with an aural signature that owners of previous generation models will recognise to be a touch more potent this time around. And a rumbling growl that's so much easier to enjoy in this convertible model. You're ready. So, what'll you notice first in this open-top variant? Well, there's no buffeting, no chassis shake over bumps, and conversation is easily possible up to and way beyond the legal limit. Plus, neck-level vents under the headrests, armrests that are now more powerfully heated, along of course with heat for the steering wheel and seats, makes al fresco motoring comfortably possible even on the coldest winter morning. This really is an immaculately engineered piece of cabriolet design, and it's a car that's taken a significant dynamic step forward in this third generation form. Previous generation Continental GT models were essentially given what was available from the Volkswagen Group parts bin, but with this car, the Bentley team were actively involved in the development of all the main engineering elements and got exactly what they wanted, which was the ability to more precisely control this model's prodigious weight and dynamic demeanour. The whole car's much better balanced for a start because the engine's been set 150mm further back on the lighter, stiffer Porsche Panamera-derived MSB chassis that the British brand has re-specified to its own exacting requirements. That platform also helps to deliver a useful 20% weight reduction for this third generation model, and the damping's far more sophisticated too, thanks to Bentley's dynamic ride control 48-valve active anti-roll bar setup. Here, electric actuators work to either loosen or stiffen the anti-roll bars depending on the way you're driving. They're slack and loose when you're in a straight line to allow lots of wheel deflection, while in a corner they quickly stiffen to reduce body roll. As you might expect, dynamic ride control is connected up to a driving mode system with selectable options you can access via this rotary dial around the starter button below the gear stick. As usual with packages of this sort, these settings influence ride quality, throttle response, steering feel and gear change timings, which come from the new much slicker shifting 8-speed PDK dual clutch auto gearbox, another thing this third generation model has borrowed from the Panamera. You'll find the usual comfort and sport modes, but you don't get an auto drive setting that chooses the ideal settings for you because this car provides something better, a dedicated Bentley mode that sets everything up as the engineers would ideally recommend. Alternatively, you might want to adjust the demeanour of this Bentley to suit your own particular, more varied preferences, much as a professional driver would set up his race car. In that case, you'll turn to the custom option that works across 3 parameters: engine and gearbox, ride and handling, and steering feel, allowing you to select from 3 choices in each case: sport, Bentley, and comfort. So, you can get a throaty exhaust note and a soft ride if that's what you really want. Another key factor in the way that dips, crests and undulations that would have slightly upset the previous model are here simply massaged away is the standard air suspension. It uses a 3-chamber setup, now offering 60% more volume than before, and as usual with these kinds of systems, is adept at lowering itself on the highway for greater cruising stability. Whatever the road you're on, you'll enjoy electric steering that's now much more pleasingly weighted, thanks no doubt to input from Porsche. Plus, there's torque vectoring to help maximise traction through the bends, and of course, as ever on a Conti GT, there's permanent 4-wheel drive, the kind of thing you still don't get on a rival Aston, McLaren or Mercedes, and a real boon if you've to travel in icy or snowy conditions. Bentley calls this system active all-wheel drive, a setup that's this time determinate, rear biased, becoming even more so when you select the sport driving mode that pushes around 85% of torque to the back axle and sees the engine note ramp up to more of a menacing snarl. The result of all this sophistication gets remarkably close to the engineering objective that this car should be able to be S-Class Cabriolet-like 1 minute and then 911 Cabrio-like the next. When the GT model line was first launched, it simply wasn't possible to make a sports car out of something nearly 2.5 tonnes in weight. What we've learned here is that now, thanks to all this technology, it almost is. There's still a fractional hesitation on turn-in that reminds you of this car's prodigious size, but otherwise, once you're familiar with this Bentley, you'll find that it can be a proper partner in performance rather than merely the kind of very fast, very luxurious sporting conveyance that its predecessors were. Which is just as well, given the power available to you beneath the bonnet. Earlier, we mentioned the engine of the W12 variant we're trying here. The letter designation referencing a unique W configuration that makes this power plant 24% shorter than an equivalent V12, benefiting weight distribution and maximising usable cabin space. It's much the same 12-cylinder, 6-litre twin turbocharged TSI engine as is found in the brand's Bentayga SUV, but here it puts out slightly more power, 635 PS, which, by the way, is 45 PS more than was available in the previous generation W12 Conti model. Bentley has developed other petrol engines for this car. You can ask your dealer about a Porsche-derived 4-litre V8 and a plug-in hybrid that makes a 3-litre V6 with an electric motor. But it's the W12 that most customers tend to want. In comparison to the Bentayga, it certainly helps that this power plant has a little less weight to lug about, so it's not surprising that performance is astonishing. With 900 newton meters of torque on tap, available from just 1,350 RPM, a mere brush of your brogues on the throttle at virtually any speed is all that's necessary to purposefully propel this car towards the horizon. Steering wheel mounted gearshift paddles are of course provided, and this time they actually turn with the wheel, which makes manual mode motoring that much easier. If the sport setting's been engaged, the 62-mile-an-hour sprint can be dispatched in just 3.8 seconds, only a tenth of a second slower than the coupe model, on the way to an unrestricted maximum that's theoretically pegged at 207 miles an hour. It's not manically thrilling in the way a rival McLaren or a Ferrari might be. This Bentley's too cultured for that, but it's certainly supercar fast. Turn the stability control system off in the way a potential owner never would, and sideways slides are apparently even possible, assuming your palatial pad has its own private test track. All of which makes it just as well that the brakes provide enormous stopping power, courtesy of discs 420mm front and 380mm rear that are claimed to be the biggest ever fitted to any production car. All of this is nice, but ultimately perhaps irrelevant for the kind of life this car is actually likely to lead. A pampered existence, easing its owners between their penthouses and their private yachts, which means that it must cover all the core Bentley attributes too, as of course it does. It's all very well talking about comparably priced sports cars like Aston Martin's DB11 Volante and Ferrari's Portofino as potential competitors, but there's simply no question as to which set of keys you choose for a longer journey, or even at the opposite extreme, a trip to your nearest designer fashion outlet. The beautifully judged ride quality is one reason for this. Road expansion joints and tarmac tears vanish beneath you with a distant thud, and even speed humps fail to transmit much of a tremor to the cabin, though you'll feel certain poorer concrete highway surfaces, courtesy of the huge wheels. But you'll hardly hear your surroundings, especially when the roof is raised, something possible in only 19 seconds at speeds of up to 30 miles an hour. Once the hood is in place, refinement is virtually the same as it would be in the equivalent fixed-top coupe model. Bentley says the decibel output is actually identical to that of a Mark II Continental GT Coupe. As in any current Conti model, such silence is aided by a deep-seated attention to engineering detail. Things like the addition of a dual-mass flywheel to the W12 engine and the use of special laminated acoustic glass for the windscreen and side windows. And of course, the all-round visibility you get from something not quite so lowly slung is enough to make you want to take this Bentley on the kind of mundane trip that would perhaps see you leaving a more exotic one in the garage. Which means that you'll be able to enjoy this car more often and therefore enjoy it all the more. You can, of course, pay much more than this in pursuit of automotive perfection. But after experiencing this Continental GT convertible, we can understand why you simply wouldn't want to. Though unmistakably a Bentley, this third generation Continental GT convertible seeks to reinterpret the elegance and style of this classic model line. At first glance, much seems familiar, with brand heritage ever present, the familiar power lines and emphasised rear haunches echoing the original 1950s R-Type Continental model. But look again. Design director Stefan Seilaf and his team have changed every exterior panel to sharpen and modernise the exterior. And the new MSB platform has allowed the car to become longer and lower, with a lengthier wheelbase and shorter overhangs that create a much sleeker sort of GT convertible. Especially from the front, where the gorgeous headlamps have been likened to spinning chandeliers. From this perspective, much seems to have been shared with previous generation Continental GT models. There was no real need to change the essential look of the original Raul Perez penned design, so the company hasn't, concentrating instead on evolving it. The classic meshed front grille hides sensors for this third generation model's more advanced safety kit and is now much larger, that can, if you wish, be mirrored by the mesh covering the lower intake further down, with its corner cutouts that incorporate these piercing LED fog lamps. It's the jewel-like twin LED matrix headlamps mentioned earlier, though, that most keenly catch the eye. Inspired by the finest cut crystal glasses, the internal surfaces are transparent with sharply defined edges that catch the light like a diamond, with a result similar to that of an illuminated gem. This effect can be further magnified by an optional welcome sequence that gradually illuminates the headlights as you approach the car. Before we get on to further specifics of the exterior design here, we should start by telling you a little about the fully automatic acoustic fabric folding top. The profile of a GT Coupe is that of a flowing fastback, but with this GTC, the hood-up silhouette is more three-box saloon style. The fabric tautly stretched with an outer layer thicker than you'll usually find with cabrio hoods, and a middle insulating layer a good deal thicker than the entire roof sections of most drop tops. As you can see, this multi-layered Z-fold hood has been finished in black here, but alternatively, to suit the paintwork you've chosen, you could select a roof in blue, claret, grey, or even a contemporary interpretation of traditional British tweed, an understated beige and brown check that's probably the trendiest option. You activate the top via this silvered centre console button between the seats, and the opening or closing process takes 19 seconds, 6 seconds quicker than before, with operation possible at speeds of up to 30 miles an hour, 10 miles an hour faster than before. It's pretty silent too, no cheap whirring of electric motors here. The need for this open-top design was allowed for at the earliest stage of the Mark III model Continental GT's design, hence the hood compartment's lack of intrusion into the cabin, the relatively low levels of extra chassis stiffening necessary, and the only fractionally detrimental effect on aerodynamics. The drag factor here rated at 0.32 CD. When retracted, the folded canopy is stored in its own boot compartment, sited low enough to allow for a pleasingly low deck that improves the roof-down profile no end. Disappointingly, though, Bentley hasn't designed an integrated rear wind deflector of the sort that would electrically raise or retract in, say, for instance, a Mercedes S-Class Cabriolet. Instead, you've got to pay extra for a clumsy contraption that's impossible to use when the rear seats are occupied. As with the coupe model, this Continental GT Convertible's profile is longer and lower in this third generation design, due in part to the positioning of the front wheels 135mm further forward, which in turn allows the bonnet to be extended and the nose to be lowered. Despite this much shorter front overhang, overall length has increased by 44mm and the lower flanks have gained this chrome strip, which culminates just before the front wheel arch with this smart and emotively branded vent. The 12 here designates the number of cylinders beneath the bonnet. These aluminium body panels are fashioned using so-called superformed technology that involves heating the alloy to 500 degrees C before it's shaped, which is what allows for these more complex and sharply defined body creases. The Mark III model Continental GT was the first production car to have an entire body side created through the superformed process. Otherwise, key aesthetic signatures from previous models still dominate, notably this so-called power line, which travels from the front wheel arch and flows just above the door handle before reaching this exaggeratedly curving crease, there to emphasise the muscular rear haunches we referenced earlier. The wheels are a size larger than before, 21-inch rims being standard, with these larger 22 inches available on request. Nestling between those spokes lie 420mm steel ventilated disc brakes, the biggest ever seen on a production road car. Perhaps the greatest stylistic departure for this third generation model, though, can be found here at the rear. The rhomboid tail lights of the two previous designs weren't especially pretty. These oval LED lamps are more elegant, styled to reflect the silhouette of the chromed exhaust tailpipes below them. Of course, as usual, what's of greater importance is what lies below the sleek panel work. A monocoque built from a mixture of aluminium and high-strength steel that's very different from the D1 Volkswagen Phaeton-sourced underpinnings used by the two previous models. Beneath the surface, the fundamentals this time round are much the same as those that underpin this car's close cousin, the second generation Porsche Panamera, which, as we said earlier, shares this car's advanced Volkswagen Group MSB platform. In fact, the entire body in white, the basic structure of this car, is first assembled at Porsche's factory in Leipzig before being transported to Bentley's state-of-the-art plant in Crewe for full assembly. Bentley claims that the structure is 5% stiffer than before and that the body as a whole is 20% lighter, though this car still tips the scales at 2,414 kilos. That's just over 110 kilos more than the coupe model, thanks to all the extra chassis stiffening needed with the convertible body style. Time to take a seat back inside and get to the part of this car that will probably really sell it to you. Bentley talks of its unrivaled expertise when it comes to the creation of exquisite interiors. It's a claim which might be disputed down the road at Rolls-Royce, but one that's difficult to doubt when you open the vault-like door and survey the extraordinary richness of the detailing and craftsmanship on display here. As the usual belt buckler eases the seat belt buckle forward over your shoulder and you settle in, you'll find yourself surveying a dashboard sculpted by long flowing wings that mirror the shape of the Bentley badge, with a floating leather top that now curves seamlessly round into the doors rather than stopping short at each corner as it did in the old model. As usual, there are bullseye vents with organ stop controllers, plus a classic company clock. Both these things, in this case, surrounded by a gorgeous optional diamond knurling, which uses a detailed three-dimensional faceted surface. On request, the vents, the clock and the whole of the lower part of the centre console can be set into an intricate 0.6mm thick Côte de Genève finish, apparently inspired by the delicate mechanical surfacing inside the finest automatic Swiss watches. Further up, the fascia trimming is even more opulent. Over 10 square metres of wood is used in every Continental GT, and it takes over 9 hours to create and fit these wooden inlays by hand. Here, they feature a one-style finish, but many buyers like the dual veneer option Bentley has introduced with this model that allows the lower section of the inlay below this silver trimming strip to be finished in a contrasting colour. The only interruption to the sweep of this glistening timber panel around the cabin is this centre dash infotainment screen, though that doesn't have to be the case. If, as here, your car has been fitted with the pricey optional Bentley rotating display, when you power off, this screen rotates, gliding elegantly into the dash, instantly softening the atmosphere of the cabin and providing you with what Bentley calls a digital detox. Unfortunately, there's no option to have this completely veneered surface when you're driving, but when you're on the move, you do have the choice of turning the panel to its third face, which gives you 3 little old-style analog dials for air temperature, a compass and a stopwatch. One poor engineer apparently spent a year working on the correct operation and alignment of this spinning display, and the result of all that effort will be a real cabin talking point. Not everything's perfect, of course. You reach down below the gear stick for the infotainment system rotary dial that you'd expect to find on a premium model of this sort, and find yourself grasping the drive controller instead. It turns out that the centre dash display we just mentioned must be managed either by various buttons or by jabbing away at its touchscreen functionality, unless you're prepared to try and master the intricacies of voice control. At 12.3 inches in size, this display isn't the biggest you'll find in the premium class these days, but it's a lot better than the restricted 8-inch monitor you get in a Bentayga. It certainly manages all its audio, navigational and informational functions well enough, these including Apple CarPlay, though not Android Auto, smartphone mirroring, a 4G mobile Wi-Fi hotspot and a 60GB hard drive. We'd want the optional name for Bentley 18-speaker 2,200-watt audio system too. If there's a better in-car hi-fi system currently available in any car in the world, we haven't yet heard it. Most of this content can also be shown in the configurable centre panel that lies between 2 main virtual gauges on the MMI instrument binnacle screen, which look a lot more like real dials than is usually the case with these sorts of setups, and feature lovely classic Eric Gill typeface fonts. Arrows on the left-hand steering wheel spoke allow you to scroll through the various options provided to brief you in the centre part of this instrument layout: trip computer, audio, phone, navigation and, if fitted, night vision. The similar instrument binnacle screen setups that other manufacturers offer give you the option of making such features expand to fill the entire display, which is quite useful to be able to do if you've paid extra for the kind of head-up display we've got fitted here and you've already got the key elements of driving data in your eye line. Here, a little annoyingly, all you can do is remove the right-hand speed dial by pressing this view button. The stitched leather's exquisite too, here with contrasting black and white fibres, particularly if your car has the optional diamond-in-diamond quilted finish that's fitted here as part of the optional Mulliner driving specification pack. Apparently there are no fewer than 310,675 stitches in every Continental GTC cabin, and 712 of those stitches go into each small embroidered upholstery diamond. This styling package features on the doors, but is most notably evident in the upholstery of these sumptuous chairs. Seats have always been a handcrafted Bentley speciality, and these optional comfort seat spec chairs really are superb, featuring 20-way power adjustment and heating, plus optional ventilation and a 6-program massaging system. A freshly designed neck warmer, which is both warmer and quieter than the one in the previous generation model, has been integrated into the upper part of the seat backs, optimising efficiency and airflow around the electrically adjustable headrests. The system features a chromed centre vane that stretches the full width of the seat air duct outlet, designed in a style supposed to echo the look of the bullseye vents on the dash. Combined with a heated steering wheel, seat heaters and new heated armrests, the idea is to create a cabin in which you could be comfortably al fresco in almost any season. But have the designers nailed the practical stuff too? Well, yes and no. There's still no button to operate all the windows at once, such as you get in some much cheaper convertibles. Plus, this piano black centre console surface smudges easily. The steeply angled windscreen pillars create a bit of a blind spot at roundabouts and angled junctions, and rearward visibility when the hood's up is somewhat compromised by the restricted size of the back window, so it's just as well that there are plenty of gadgets to help you park. As for stowage space, well, we'd like to have seen larger door pockets, an overhead sunglasses compartment and a glove box not so space compromised by media equipment, but otherwise cabin storage provision is largely fine. Lift this rather stiff folding top between the seats and there's a shallow area complete with twin USBs, an aux-in point and a 12-volt socket. In addition, there are 2 cup holders under a rotating lid below the gear stick. Plus, you get a small, narrow side ledge in the passenger footwell, ticket clips in the sun visors and coat hooks behind the headrests. We ought to talk about the rear seats too. Now, despite the fact that most owners will most frequently use them only for fashionable coats and designer shopping bags, given the changeable nature of our country's climate, you'll probably be using these rear seats more frequently when the roof's up. So, we'll raise the hood for this section. This GT convertible, like some other models in this class, is described as a 2+2, but as others have pointed out, it's important to remember with Grand Tourers that 2+2 rarely equals 4. The key question we've to address here concerns the issue of whether the prodigious size of this third generation Continental GT convertible, it's almost 5 metres long, which is 111 millimetres lengthier than an Aston Martin DB11 Volante, will be enough to make it one of the very few 4-seat cabrios in the world in which fully sized adults can be truly comfortable on longer trips. Well, let's see. As with most open-top cars, the door here is very long, so when opening it wide enough to access the back seat, it's easy to inadvertently bash it against some sort of solid object. Avoid that issue, then pull forward the seat back and the base glides towards the dash to let you in. Obviously, access is much easier when the roof's down. When the hood's erected like this, the requirement to duck below the roofline requires far more athletic contortions. Then you take a seat, pull that seat back towards you, and then watch with vague alarm as the base glides back to your knees, threatening to crush them rearwards. It doesn't, of course. There's a neat détente in the electric mechanism to ensure that'll never happen. Still, the fact is that it's impossible for an averagely sized driver to be ideally placed up front with an averagely sized adult passenger sitting behind. Given the wheelbase increase of nearly 100 millimetres this time round, we'd hoped for more. To be fair, it is better back here than it was in the previous design. The scalloped front seat backs help, and it'll certainly be easier than it was before to fit a large rear-facing child seat into the back here. Predictably, headroom with the roof up still remains at something of a premium, but of course that's also the case with obvious rivals. In this case, you'll probably be okay, provided you're not over 6 foot. The slight feeling of claustrophobia that afflicted some passengers in the rear in early generation versions of this model isn't quite as evident here, though the side rear windows, which remain electrically operable, are still tiny. Between the seats you get this narrow centre storage box covered by a sliding lid, one of the only cheap feeling fitments in the car. That lid is somewhat reluctant to slide back, but once it does, twin USB ports, a 12-volt point and 2 cup holders are revealed. Otherwise, the quality back here is as faultless as it is up front, particularly if you've specified these lovely quilted side panels, the upgraded NEM audio system with its lovely tiny silver speakers and the configurable multicoloured LED strip lighting. Let's take a look at luggage space out back. Accessed via a power-operated boot lid. Now, should you have specified the optional City specification pack, this could be activated by a wave of your foot beneath the bumper if, key in pocket, you happen to be approaching the car laden down with bags. As for actual capacity, well, despite this Mark III model's extra body length, the 235-litre boot capacity figure, 123 litres less than the coupe version, is actually 25 litres less than the previous generation Continental GT Convertible could offer. It's also, incidentally, 35 litres less than you'd get in an Aston Martin DB11 Volante. The floor falls away as it dips down towards this stainless steel lip, which will scratch easily, and there's no space below it to store anything else, despite the fact that Bentley declines to equip this car with any kind of spare wheel. There are 4 silvered tie-down points and a 12-volt socket. You could maybe just about take a couple of large suitcases back here, or a golf bag, but that's going to be your lot. There's unfortunately no option to push forward the rear seat backs and extend this space, nor can you have the ski hatch that can be specified on the coupe variant, so that narrow, lengthy items could be accommodated. You won't be expecting Bentley craftsmanship to be inexpensive, and it isn't. This model sits in an altogether more exclusive 6-figure realm than it did in its previous generation guises. Priced at launch from around £175,000 for the W12 convertible version we're trying here. That's just under £17,000 more than the equivalent coupe model. Around £165,000 buys you the alternative 4-litre V8 version, identifiable by quad exhaust pipes and subtle V8 badging on the front wings. Either way, that sounds a lot. It is a lot, but if you allow for inflation, you'll find that this car is actually a fraction more affordable than it was when it was first launched back in 2006, if that's any consolation. Your Bentley specialist can also brief you on the way that the brand has engineered petrol-electric plug-in hybrid technology for this car too. As with any contender in this segment, the requested sticker figure is nothing more than just a starting point, as we'll discover shortly. On to market positioning. Now here, our focus is on the W12 convertible, a 635 PS 12-cylinder powerhouse of a GT that on the face of things loses little to a Rolls-Royce Dawn convertible, costing just over £100,000 more. You might perhaps also compare it to an Aston Martin DBS Superleggera Volante V12, costing around £75,000 more. Bentley pointedly doesn't reference either of these cars in its comparisons, which is interesting because actually there's nothing else in the lottery winners sports convertible market that you can now have with a V12 engine, and therefore nothing else that's quite the same. Nothing else quite the same as this Continental GT Convertible W12 model anyway. Obviously, if you shift your interest to the alternative 550 PS V8 version of this Bentley, your options from other brands widen, because all the other cars you might consider as potential competitors to this GTC have V8s, or in the case of the Porsche 911 Turbo S Cabriolet, a 6-cylinder unit. We think the Aston Martin DB11 Volante is the closest match. It costs around £5,000 less than the GTC V8, but also develops 32 brake horsepower less from its Mercedes-sourced 4-litre V8 and offers far less space in the rear seats. A roomier but less dynamically sporting alternative, the Mercedes-AMG S63 Cabriolet, has much the same AMG power plant fitted up front, and that car offers 612 horsepower for around £142,000. Mercedes, by the way, no longer offers the V12-engined S65 version of that model in our market. We'd like to also reference the Maserati Gran Cabrio because it's one of the few luxury sports convertibles with space for adults in the back. But that Italian contender has a much less opulent feel that's reflected by its much lower £110,000 asking price. And it offers a considerably less potent 460 horsepower V8 engine. Closer in the power stakes are two BMW 8 Series cabriolet models, the M850i xDrive, which costs around £108,000 and offers 530 horsepower, and the M8 Competition xDrive, which costs around £130,000 and offers 625 horsepower. But these are cars that, like that Maserati, really compete in a slightly less exclusive part of this segment. So you're getting the idea. There really isn't much else that's directly comparable to this Bentley. We could theoretically talk about six-figure supercar cabrio alternatives from Audi, Mercedes-AMG and McLaren in comparison to a Continental GT Convertible V8. An Audi R8 Spider V10 Performance would save you around £28,000. A Mercedes-AMG GT C Roadster would save you around £20,000, and a McLaren 570S Spider would cost about the same. But all those models are two-seaters, and all are really rather different cars, better suited to Silverstone than the suburbs. This Bentley isn't as good a track machine as an AMG GT, an R8 or a McLaren, but it does overall have a much wider scope of abilities. Ultimately, we'd say that if what's on offer here really hits the sweet spot for you, and we can certainly see why it might, then you won't find anything else on the market that's quite the same. Having made that decision, you'll probably be mildly interested to know just how generous Bentley has been with the standard specifications, so that you can establish just how much further box ticking is going to be required before a personalised version of this car can join the other exclusive models you'll doubtless already have residing in your oak timber-framed garage. Well, let's see. The standard spec gives you an 8-speed dual-clutch auto transmission, active all-wheel drive and air suspension with adaptive continuous damping control and 4 height settings. There's also the Bentley Drive Dynamics Control driving mode system, which via Comfort, Sport or Bentley settings allows you to alter ride quality, throttle response, steering feel and gear change timings to suit your mood. You also get full LED matrix headlamps that adapt to the road, other motorists and driving conditions, plus full LED tail lamps, twin oval stainless steel tailpipes, a powered boot lid and 21-inch 5 tri-spoke alloy wheels. Inside there are exquisite Bentley designed leather powered heated seats, an electrically adjustable steering column, laminated acoustic glass for the windscreen and side windows, and tread plates embossed with first edition. Plus, of course, all-round parking sensors, climate control and auto headlamps and wipers. Infotainment's taken care of by a centre dash colour infotainment screen that connects you into a 10-speaker, 650-watt, 11-channel DAB stereo system and a 60-gigabyte hard drive. Bluetooth lets you hook up your smartphone. There's Apple CarPlay, smartphone mirroring, though no Android Auto. And you get a 4G mobile Wi-Fi hotspot as standard. The same 12.3-inch monitor also runs satellite navigation that features 3D building view graphics, along with traffic information and a Google point of interest search function. Plus, you can use voice or gesture control to change settings, such as the volume, or to zoom in without having to put a finger on the screen. As previously mentioned, all of this represents merely a starting point on the journey towards creating what is intended to be a completely bespoke product. So, where to begin? Well, you'll definitely need the wind deflector, which fits over the rear seats to reduce cabin turbulence when there's just two of you up front. Annoyingly, that costs extra. Also, just as disappointingly, the interior's biggest talking point this time around, the Bentley rotating display, also costs more. A cool £4,500 more, in fact. Still, you kind of have to have it if you're to experience everything the inside of this car has to offer. If you don't want to continually have to view that infotainment screen we just mentioned, this feature enables you to rotate it to a position where instead this area of the dash shows 3 elegant analog dials, or rotate the panel again to leave just a classy veneered fascia surface. The 3 positions each completely change the atmosphere of the cabin. Beyond that, well, it's really down to how far you want to go. The paint, leather and veneer options available are virtually unlimited and will be tailored to you as an individual. The standard outer paint palette alone includes 70 different exterior paint colours. We've got blue crystal here, but beluga, bronze and Old English white also look great. Orange flame would be the choice for extroverts, while Bonato and classic British racing green both look particularly good if you specify the optional chrome deleting Continental blackline specification. Your chosen panelwork shade can be coordinated with your choice of 7 different exterior roof colours, including for the first time a contemporary interpretation of traditional British tweed. Black, blue, claret and grey are amongst the other options. You can also specify a bright chromed lower bumper grille, complete with a chromed strip. There's also a styling specification pack that uses high gloss black carbon fibre for the front splitter, the rear diffuser, the boot lip spoiler and the side sills. Inside, there's even more choice. 15 luxurious carpet options. We'd have the deep pile overmats that you can specify to sink your feet into at the front. And 15 choices of interior trim hide with different colour splits. Here, we've got a dual tone cabin in Linene and Brunel leather. If this were our car, we'd also want to look at the softer semi-aniline leather finish you can have for the upholstery and the door inserts. Then there are 8 different handcrafted veneers, starting with Koa, Bentley's newest veneer, and also including Burr Walnut, Tamo Ash and Dark Fiddleback Eucalyptus. Or you can alternatively have those inlays finished in Piano Black, Liquid Amber or Dark Stained Madrona. To help those who can't decide, 4 unique dual veneer options are available on a GTC for the first time. Here we've got Liquid Amber over Grand Black. And customers can choose from 8 interior hood lining colours, including New Red, Blue and Magnolia. You can also personalise things further down the fascia in the area around the gear stick. For this area, we'd particularly want to look at the rather unique striped technical finish for the centre console. Bentley calls it Côte de Genève. Also tempting is the diamond knurling specification, which adds an exclusive diamond-like crisscross finish to the bullseye vents, the organ stop fascia controls and the clock bezels. Customers can also choose personalised stitching in the front and rear of the car, or the rather exclusive hand cross stitch upholstery finish. You can also have contrast stitching for the carpet binding and personalised tread plates. The steering wheel, available either with or without heating, can be ordered in polished wooden form or with single tone or duotone finishes. If you want to go even further with customisation, a team of dedicated craftspeople at Mulliner, Bentley's personal commissioning division, are ready to create a cabin and an overall look to meet your every need, if your pockets are deep enough. Wheels, well, you can embellish them with red painted calipers. As for wheel size and styling, well, there are basically 2 main choices: a 21-inch 10-spoke rim or a larger 22-inch 5 open spoke option. All the wheel designs on offer are available in a selection of 10 polished and painted finishes. The larger 22-inch rims we've got here come included as part of the pricey optional Mulliner driving specification pack, which also includes unique diamond seat quilting, embroidered Bentley emblems, additional veneer options, a jewelled finish fuel filler, sports pedals and an indented leather headliner. What else? Well, you're probably going to want to upgrade your car's audio system. Most Continental GT owners do. Possibly with the 16-speaker 1,500-watt Bang & Olufsen setup, but ideally with the 18-speaker 2,200-watt Name for Bentley premium package we've been trying here. An extra which will set you back over £6,600. Is any setup worth that? Well, all we can say is that we've never tried a better in-car audio system. Other things you might want to allow budget for include the comfort seat package, which gives you 20-way adjustability and additional massage and seat ventilation options, and the optional mood lighting package, which allows you to bathe the interior in a choice of 14 different shades. You can broaden the scope of that centre dash 12.3-inch screen by adding into it a TV tuner and maybe also a top view camera that'll provide an overhead image of the car, helpful for driving and manoeuvring in tight spaces. Plus, you might well want a heated windscreen, an inductive phone charger, an interior air ioniser, an automatic parking system that'll identify spaces and steer you into them, and a valet key which lets others drive your car without giving them access to the glove box or the boot. We like the optional LED welcome lamps, which project the Bentley emblem onto the ground when you open the door at night, and the welcome home lighting that sees the headlamps complete a bespoke sequence when you approach or leave the car. Also tempting would be the parking heater with radio remote control option that lets you set in advance the ideal interior temperature before you get into your car. If you're going to be grand touring, then you're probably also going to want the bespoke Beluga Portland luggage set that'll allow you to make the most of the space in the boot. Or if you're leaving this Bentley at home while you're away grand touring, then you might want the trickle charger for the battery that resides in its own zip-up pouch in the boot. A boot net and a jewelled torch are also offered. We haven't mentioned autonomous driving kit, and that's because, initially at least, Bentley hasn't prioritised this to any great extent in developing this car, which is rather surprising, given that the brand has access to all the technology that Audi is pioneering in this regard. Even more surprising is that the same comments apply to safety. All the usual electronic aids and airbags are, of course, present. Plus, there's a private e-call feature that will automatically alert the emergency services if the airbags activate in an accident. And beyond that, well, to be frank, we're surprised that so much of the camera-driven stuff you'd now expect to see as standard on a car of this price is relegated to the options list. Take autonomous braking, one of those setups that, as you drive, scans the road ahead in search of potential accident hazards, warning you if one's detected and, if necessary, braking the car to avoid a collision. We're a bit shocked that Bentley's system, Bentley's Safeguard Plus, isn't standard, regardless of spec, on all versions of this car. For goodness sake, it's standard on the cheapest Ford Focus these days. Still, you do get it as one of the 5 features in the touring specification pack that most customers choose, along with 4 other inclusions: a head-up display, lane assist, which steers you back into your lane should you drift from it, ACC, or adaptive cruise control, which automatically keeps you a safe distance from the car in front on the highway and can work with predictive data from the navigation system, and night vision, which gives you enhanced forward vision after dark. Almost all Continental GT buyers also tick the further box for the City specification pack, which includes 7 further features. City Assist, the first of them, allows this Bentley to effectively drive itself in low-speed traffic queues at up to 37 miles an hour, taking care of throttle and steering for you, as long as you keep at least one hand on the wheel, and using camera technology to keep the car in lane. It sounds futuristic, but if you have to regularly commute in stop-and-go traffic, it's a feature you'll really come to depend on. This works in conjunction with a pedestrian warning system which scans the road and the pavements ahead as you drive for pedestrians or animals who might be about to inadvertently step out in front of you. If someone or something is detected, the car will warn you and, if necessary, automatically brake the car to avoid them. The third City specification pack feature is reversing traffic warning, which will alert you to oncoming vehicles when you're reversing out of a space. And there's traffic sign recognition, which pictures road signs you pass and displays them on the dash. The City specification pack also includes hands-free boot opening, allowing you to raise the boot lid with a wave of your foot beneath the bumper, and automatic dimming mirrors. Plus, you also get the top view camera system we mentioned previously. Even Bentley isn't immune from the need to make its cars more efficient, hence the importance of the 20% reduction in weight that this third generation Continental GT Convertible enjoys over its predecessor, 50 kilos of which comes courtesy of its lighter body shell. Were it not for the fact that extra high-tech kit has had to be added this time round, the saving would have been even greater. Perhaps we shouldn't get too excited. This, after all, is still a near 2.5-ton piece of Anglo-Teutonic real estate that, for all its sleek looks, actually has a chunky drag coefficient of 0.32 CD, 8 points down on the brand's slab-sided Bentayga SUV. But at least the crew concern has done what it can. Take the way that the W12 petrol engine we're trying here is 10.4% more efficient than the previous one and shuts down half its cylinders on part throttle load, so that most of the time what you're actually going to be driving is a 6-cylinder Continental GT. There's also so-called intelligent coasting, which at cruise on the highway disconnects the engine from the gearbox, sending the car into a sailing style mode until you brush your foot against the throttle again. And you get a sophisticated engine start-stop system that works not only when the vehicle is stationary in traffic, but also at the frequent near-to-stop speeds that characterise regular progress in urban motoring. On the face of things with this W12 model, the results of all this effort don't appear to be huge in terms of the fuel and CO2 figures you actually get, which are claimed to be 16% better this time round, but which remain quite a lot worse than the returns of the equivalent fixed-top model. You're looking at an NEDC-rated CO2 reading of 317 grams per kilometre, 278 grams per kilometre for the coupe, and a combined cycle WLTP rated fuel figure of 20.2 miles per gallon, 23.2 for the coupe. Still, at least the decently sized 90-litre fuel tank, the same as that of the coupe, should allow for a decently long range between fill-ups that's typically likely to be between 350 and 450 miles. By and large, Bentley owners don't care how much the thing will cost to fuel, but they are irritated by how often they have to bruise their brogues on filling station forecourts. The alternative 4-litre petrol V8 engine will obviously do a bit better than this, but not much. If you really want to slash these returns and be able to face the green lobby with more of a clear conscience, then you'll need to talk to your dealer about the plug-in hybrid powertrain that's been developed for this car. This combines a 3-litre V6 petrol engine with an efficient electric motor powered by a lithium-ion battery that can take you up to around 30 all-electric miles when fully replenished. Charging takes just 2.5 hours from a designer-styled power dock that the brand will fit in your oak-timbered garage. But if you're charging from a conventional household power socket when out and about, you'll need to allow 7.5 hours to bring the battery fully back to speed. Whatever engine you select for your Continental GT, you'll need to be aware that, as ever, other factors will have more of an effect on the running costs you're taking on than the emission and fuel figures this Bentley generates. For a start, for road tax, you're going to be pitched right up into the priciest M designated band, while company car drivers will be looking at a top rate 37% benefit in kind bracket and an annual associated tax bill that could be as much as £25,000 a year for users in the highest additional rate tax band. On a car this expensive, the really big ticket item though is always going to be depreciation. Industry experts CAP expect this car to retain around 56% of its value after 3 years, and if that's realised, it would see this Bentley outperforming comparable products like Aston Martin's DB11 at 52%, the Rolls-Royce Dawn at 46%, and the Mercedes AMG S63 Cabriolet at 37%. You'll damage that showing hugely, though, by loading the car up with pricey extras. There'll be no getting out of pricey insurance premiums either. All versions of this Bentley are rated at Group 50, and servicing certainly won't be cheap. The intervals for both engines come round every 10,000 miles or 12 months, depending on which arrives soonest. A 2-year prepaid servicing package is available for about £2,000. This is all backed up by a 3-year unlimited mileage warranty, which is pretty much par for the course in the luxury sector, although Rolls-Royce offers 4 years on its new cars. Continental GT buyers also get a roadside assistance package that, in the very unlikely event of a breakdown, will get you going or take your Bentley to an approved repairer. If it can't be fixed quickly, you'll be provided with a car to carry on your journey, or even a hotel to stay in while the car is sorted. This Continental GT Convertible remains a wonderful achievement. It isn't too taxing to create a supercar capable of lapping racetracks at outlandish speeds, but to create something that can do almost the same while closeting you in an atmosphere akin to an exclusive gentleman's club is a rare feat indeed. Certainly, you could create a slightly more driver-focused machine than this by compromising in certain areas: luxury, cabin space, refinement. Some other brands in this segment do. It depends what you want. For sure, the same kind of spend on an Aston Martin DB11 Volante or a Ferrari Portofino would buy you more of a sense of occasion, and a very potent Porsche 911 Turbo Cabriolet would be quicker and more agile. This Bentley, though, is in a different league to any of those cars in terms of comfort, the brand refusing to be deflected from its quest to create the ultimate all-round GT, a car you could cross continents in, but one you'd also love to try on the odd twisting mountain pass or racetrack as you did it. Most of what we change here comes down to specification semantics. The Bentley rotating display is a core cabin element and should be standard. Plus, it's ridiculous that you have to pay extra for pretty ordinary elements of camera-driven safety kit. Otherwise, this British-designed and British-built paragon of sporting luxury is at last the car it should always have been. Owning one of these is like having your own private jet. In fact, it's better than that because it's so much more usable, and roof down you can enjoy the journey so much more. This was always the world's most beautifully engineered luxury open-topped conveyance. Now, with its extra sporting brio, it's even more desirable. Is it the proper 4-seater supercar convertible we were promised? Specified correctly, you could argue that. What's more important, though, is that this remains a gloriously unique way to travel. In every way, a true GT convertible. A Bentley convertible.